You think you know these stories. You believe in the archetypes etched into your memory, the noble hero who slays the beast, the wicked villain who finally receives his just punishment, and the triumphant victory of good over evil. It is a comfortable narrative, a simple moral compass designed to guide the young, but the Greeks never wrote it that way. The myths you were told as a child, those tales whispered in classrooms or read in leather-bound books, were sanded down by time. Sweetened by modern morality and stripped of their darkest, most visceral truths. They were sanitized for your protection, turning jagged edges into smooth stones. Tonight, we peel back the layers of centuries of revision. We strip away the polish to expose the raw ancient bones underneath. We put the originals back where they belong. And as the truth unfolds, you will find that the line between hero and monster is not a wall, but a shadow. By the end, every villain you grew up hating will look very different. Look upon the face that turns men to stone. Consider the gaze of Medusa, the monster, the nightmare, and the creature whose beheading would eventually earn Perseus his place in legend. But look past the myth of the beast and see what she was before the snakes replaced her hair and terror became her only legacy. Before she was a trophy for hero to claim, Medusa was a priestess of Athena. She was a woman sworn to sacred chastity. A woman whose beauty was so radiant it was spoken of in hushed tones throughout the land. Then came the shadow of the deep. Poseidon, the god of the sea, sought her. He did not ask, he took. In an act of ultimate desecration, he claimed her by force within the very sanctuary of Athena's temple. In that moment of violation, the priestess was transformed into a pariah. And the beauty she once possessed was curdled into a curse that would freeze the hearts of any man brave enough to look upon her face. And Athena's punishment fell not upon the god who committed the deed, but upon the victim of the divine whim. With a cruel stroke of power, she transformed Medusa's tresses into writhing serpents and curdled her very gaze into a petrifying curse, casting her out to rot in exile on a lonely, desolate island. You must understand that Medusa did not choose to be a monster. She was forged into one by the gods. Forced into a grotesque existence for surviving a violation that was never, ever her fault. She became a tragic byproduct of celestial cruelty, a woman whose only crime was enduring what was inflicted upon her. So, when Perseus eventually arrived to claim her head, stripping away the myth to reveal the raw truth beneath, you must pause and look closer at the history of her suffering. Look past the scales and the snakes and ask yourself, in this cycle of violence and divine spite, who was truly the real monster in that story? Now consider the strongman. Look upon Hercules. He is the archetype of might, the ultimate hero's hero, a name synonymous with impossible feats and unmatched strength. But look closer at the myth beneath the muscle and the fame and ask yourself, why did he perform those 12 labors at all? The truth is not found in the pursuit of glory, but in the shadow of a horrific crime, driven into a fit of madness sent by the vengeful goddess Hera. Hercules committed an act of unspeakable violence. He killed his own wife and children with his bare hands. You must understand that the labors were never a quest for renown, they were penance. They were a sentence imposed upon a broken man. Every beast slain and every impossible task completed was merely a desperate attempt to atone for what he had done. He was a man trying to wash blood off his hands, blood that, no matter how many monsters he conquered or mountains he moved, would never come clean. We remember the lion and the hydra. We celebrate the roar of the beast and the multi-headed terror of the myth, turning these monsters into symbols of triumph to be conquered by the blade. But in our retelling, we forget a haunting truth, that the greatest hero of Greece spent his life haunted by what he had done. The Greeks understood something profound that we have lost in the passing of centuries. They knew that strength doesn't make you good. They saw the distinction between power and virtue as a chasm wide enough to swallow a man whole. They witnessed the strongest man alive, a figure of unparalleled might, and recognized that he was also the most broken. This was not a flaw in the story or a poetic inconsistency in their legends. That was the point. The tragedy lay in the heavy cost of greatness, the realization that while a hero can slay a monster, the scars of the act remain forever. Strength is a tool, but it is not a sanctuary for the soul. Consider the gods who pulled the strings from above. Look upon Zeus, the figure marketed as the king of Olympus, the majestic hurler of thunderbolts and the noble father god of the sky. This is the polished image of the myth, a towering sovereign of the heavens. But look closer beneath the golden veneer of divinity, and you will find a reality that is far darker. The truth of his reign is not one of noble protection, but of systematic violation. Zeus was a serial predator who chose to manipulate the very fabric of nature to satisfy his whims. He transformed into wild animals and raging storms, weaving illusions to deceive and assault mortal women across the land. Once his desires were sated, he retreated to his throne, leaving these victims behind to face the vengeful wrath of his wife alone. The lightning he wielded was not just a symbol of power. It was the shadow of a predator who hid his cruelty behind the mask of a king. Leda, Europa, Callisto, name after name, life after life, each one ruined so a god could get what he wanted. Look closely at their stories and you see the pattern. These were not just myths, they were casualties. They were women consumed by the whims of the divine, their lives dismantled to satisfy a celestial appetite. And when Hera raged against these transgressions, she lashed out at the victims, the women, never her husband. The punishment fell upon those who suffered the most. While the architect of the ruin remained untouched, the Greeks didn't worship Zeus because he was good. They worshipped him because they were forced to acknowledge his supremacy. They feared him not for his morality, but because he was powerful and entirely unaccountable. He acted without consequence, shielded by his status as a king of gods. Look at the structure of that power. Strip away the marble and the myth, and it sounds like any kind of power you recognize today. The same patterns of immunity, the same cycle of collateral damage, still echo in the halls of modern authority. You have seen him countless times in stone and bronze. You have passed his likeness on 1,000 statues, a titan frozen in time, muscles coiled like iron cables, straining under a weight that would crush any mortal man. You recognize the silhouette of Atlas, the name synonymous with the ultimate burden. But here is what nobody tells you. The mythic truth is far more haunting than the common retelling. Atlas was never tasked with holding up the earth beneath his feet. He was condemned to hold up the sky above his head. He was chained to the heavens themselves, forced to support the very vault of the firmament to keep it from crashing back down into the earth. It was not a burden of soil and stone, but of the cosmos. He stands in an eternal, agonizing vigil, his spine buckling under the weight of the celestial dome, destined to hold up the heavens for all of eternity. It wasn't merely a job, it was a prison sentence. When Atlas fought on the losing side of a war against the gods, he didn't just lose his freedom, he lost his peace. Zeus crafted a punishment designed to be absolute, demanding that Atlas bear the crushing weight of the sky forever. There is no respite in his labor, no moment of reprieve, and no hope of ever being freed from the burden upon his shoulders. He exists in a cycle of eternal torture. A silent martyr at the edge of the world. Yet, through the passage of centuries, we have done something peculiar to his agony. We turned an eternal torture into a decorating statue. We take his misery and place it in our galleries and courtyards for aesthetic pleasure. The Greeks would find this transformation hilarious, even a little terrifying. They would see the irony of a man's infinite torment becoming a centerpiece of human decoration. A trophy of a tragedy we can choose to admire, while he remains trapped beneath the heavens. In a world governed by the whims of the divine, one mortal woman dared to reach beyond the limits of human capability and strive to be better than a god. Her name was Arachne, a weaver whose craft was so exquisite, so hauntingly perfect, that it transcended the realm of mere skill. She became known as the finest weaver in the world, her hands moving with a grace that left observers breathless. It was whispered among the people that such mastery could not possibly be human. They claimed she must have been taught by Athena herself, but Arachne stood firm against their whispers. She defied them, declaring with pride that her skill was mine alone, a talent born of her own spirit and labor. This defiance drew the gaze of the goddess. Driven by a challenge to the heavens, Athena confronted the weaver in a contest of craft. They sat before their looms, weaving masterpieces that defied imagination. In the end, the truth was revealed. Arachne won. She had surpassed the divine, proving her mastery stood unrivaled. She didn't just win a contest, she exposed a fundamental truth that the heavens could no longer ignore. Her tapestry was more than mere fabric. It was a visceral chronicle of the divine, depicting the gods at their cruelest, the brutal assaults, the calculated lies, and the bitter betrayals, all woven into perfect, undeniable thread. Every stitch was flawless, every motif was true. It was a masterpiece that mirrored reality with such precision that it became an affront to the sacred. And for the crime of being right, and even better than the divine standard, Athena struck. In a fit of jealous rage, the goddess destroyed her work and cursed her to spin forever in the shadows. Arachne became the first spider, condemned to weave her web in perpetual solitude. She was not punished for mere arrogance, but for an excellence the gods could not forgive, a mastery so profound that it threatened the very authority of the heavens. Now, in every web caught in the morning dew, you see the remnants of a perfection that was too dangerous to exist. You have been told the tale of Pandora since the dawn of myth, the tragic woman who reached out her hand and opened the box, unleashing an era of suffering and evil upon a world that had known only peace. But look closer at the ancient architecture of the legend. There was no box. The original Greek word used by the poets was *pithos*, not a small chest, but a massive clay jar. And you must understand that Pandora was never a victim of simple carelessness. She was a masterpiece of divine engineering. Created by the gods on the direct orders of Zeus, she was forged as a weapon of calculated precision. Her curiosity was not a flaw, it was a feature instilled into her very being by design. She was constructed to wonder, and then she was handed the one jar she was destined to open, in the hands of the gods. She wasn't a careless woman making a mistake. She was a sophisticated instrument of destruction, fulfilling a purpose written in the stars before she ever touched the lid. She was not a woman of choice, but a trap, a deliberate snare forged by the gods to punish humanity for its stolen gift of fire. When she reached out and broke the seal on that ancient jar, it was not an accident of curiosity, it was the execution of a divine design. In that single, devastating moment, sickness, sorrow, and death poured out into the world, spilling forth exactly as planned by those who watched from above. The only thing left lingering in the bottom of the vessel was hope. You must see her clearly. Pandora did not doom humanity through some personal weakness or a lapse in judgment. She was the bomb, crafted with intent, and the gods were the ones who lit the fuse. They orchestrated the explosion, then stood back from the wreckage to point their fingers at her. They chose the victim of their design to carry the weight of their malice, blaming her for the very catastrophe they had already set in motion. You have heard the tale told in the nursery and the classroom, the story of Persephone, the maiden snatched from the fields of grain, dragged into the sunless depths by the shadow of Hades. It is a myth of abduction that serves as a convenient explanation for the turning of the seasons, a narrative where she is a victim of fate, lost to the earth until the winter passes. That is the version we tell, the one comfortable enough to repeat. But if you look closer, if you turn your eyes away from the polished surface and read the older hymns, a stranger truth begins to emerge from the gloom. In these ancient verses, Persephone was not a frightened girl fleeing a predator. She was a goddess who walked toward the dead by choice, drawn to the silent majesty of the abyss. She did not become a prisoner, she grew into power. She became the dread queen of the underworld, ruling beside Hades with authority that was absolute, undeniable, and entirely her own. Her mother Demeter's grief froze the world into winter, yes, a chilling, silent frost that gripped the earth and halted the cycle of growth. But do not mistake a moment of capture for a lifetime of captivity. Persephone did not spend eternity as a victim, nor did she remain the weeping girl lost in the shadows. She underwent a metamorphosis of power, rising from the stolen child to become one of the most feared rulers in all of myth. A queen whose name even the boldest heroes whispered with profound caution. The kidnapped girl grew into a sovereign of the dead, commanding the very ghosts that haunt the edges of our dreams. You must realize that not everyone who is taken stays a prisoner. Some are forged by their chains into something formidable. She traded her innocence for an iron crown, transforming from a girl lost in the underworld into the mistress of its kingdom. She did not just survive the shadows. She mastered them, claiming a throne that commanded awe and dread alike. We tell the story as a cautionary tale of hubris. Icarus flew too close to the sun, and we use his name today to define the very essence of reckless pride. We paint him as a man blinded by his own ambition, reaching for heights he was never meant to touch. But look closer at the myth, and the narrative shifts from vanity to desperation. You must see Icarus not as a tragic hero of ego, but as a boy trapped in a tower, imprisoned alongside his inventor father. Daedalus, they were both prisoners held under the iron grip of a king. In this light, the wings of feather and wax were never an experiment or a vanity project, they were a necessity born of fear. Those wings were forged from the hope of freedom, a literal lifeline constructed in the shadows of their confinement. They weren't a dare to the heavens, they were the only way out. When the wax melted, it wasn't just a failure of will, but the tragic cost of seeking escape from captivity. Yes, he flew higher than he was warned to. The warnings were clear, echoed by those who watched from the safety of the ground, but for that one fleeting moment, he wasn't a subject or a prisoner, he was a child who was finally free. He soared above the crashing waves, his wings catching the light, finding a boundless horizon after a lifetime spent confined within the suffocating walls of a cage. But when we watched him fall, we chose to tell a different story. We turned his desperate, primal bid for freedom into a clinical lecture about the dangers of arrogance and the folly of ambition. We judged his height as a sin rather than a triumph. Perhaps the true lesson was never that he flew too high. Perhaps the haunting truth is what lies in our reaction to his fall. Maybe the real lesson is this: look at what we do to the ones who try to escape. Deep within the twisting, suffocating corridors of the Labyrinth lies a shadow that haunted the collective psyche of Athens for generations. You see it in your nightmares: the Minotaur, a towering, grotesque fusion of man and beast, a bull-headed monster whose presence turned the maze into a tomb where young Athenians were fed to its hunger like sacrifices to an insatiable void. For centuries, the world knew only the monster that Theseus heroically slew in the dark. The beast that required a champion's blade to conquer. But history hides a truth beneath the myth of the monster. The Minotaur was not merely a beast, he had a name, Asterion. He was not born from malice or chosen for his cruelty. He was a child, born of a curse the gods placed upon his mother, a divine spite that twisted his flesh while leaving his spirit untouched. Monstrous in form, yet innocent in origin, Asterion was a victim of celestial whim. A lonely soul trapped in a body of nightmare, waiting in the labyrinth for a hero to end his solitude. Imagine the weight of a crown that demands a sacrifice of blood and dignity. For King Minos, his own son was not a prince but a deformity, a secret so grotesque it could not be born in the light of day. Out of a desperate, hollow sense of shame, he constructed an inescapable maze, a sprawling tomb of stone and shadow where the boy would be hidden from the world's gaze. He locked him inside, casting him into the crushing darkness of the labyrinth, alone in the gloom. There, The beast was fed on prisoners because Minos knew no other way to sustain his shame-born prisoner. The Minotaur did not choose this winding prison. He was sentenced to it at the very moment of his birth. When Theseus finally navigated the twisting corridors and drove his blade deep into the creature's heart, he did not slay a monster from some mythical realm. He killed a prisoner, a boy who had been abandoned by his father, a victim whom nobody ever tried to save. Imagine the weight of it, the crushing stone against your chest as you heave it upward. You are Sisyphus, and you are condemned to roll a massive boulder up a steep incline forever, only to watch it tumble back down the moment you reach the summit. It is the ultimate archetype of pointless, eternal labor, a cycle of effort that yields no progress, a sentence of infinite repetition. But to understand why he bears this burden, you must look back to his defiance. Sisyphus was not merely a man who sought ease. He was a mortal king who dared to challenge the cosmic order. He outwitted death itself. In a feat of staggering audacity, he managed to capture and chain up Thanatos, the very god of death. For a brief, terrifying span of time, his cunning worked. No human being could die at all. Because he dared to seize control over the inevitable transition from life to shadow, he was branded with this eternal cycle, forever pushing against the weight of a crime that halted the march of mortality. He cheated the underworld twice, twisting the laws of fate with a cunning that defied the very foundations of existence. He tricked the gods themselves, weaving a web of deception so profound that shook the pillars of Olympus. In his defiance, he chose to seize a few more years of sunlight, a brief, stolen season of warmth and life, over the cold, hollow permanence of the grave. You must understand that his punishment was not born of malice or for an act of evil. Rather, it was the price paid for being too clever. He refused to accept death quietly, refusing to submit to the inevitable silence the gods demanded of every mortal soul. The Greeks gave us a man who beat death, a rebel who traded eternal submission for a fleeting spark of life. And in his wake, they gave us the gods who ensured that no other mortal would ever dare try again. His story remains a haunting testament to the cost of brilliance and the iron resolve of those who rule the heavens. Look closely at the cycle of these tragedies and notice the recurring pattern hidden beneath the marble and the myth. Consider Medusa, a woman cursed and punished for the crime of being a victim. Then look to Arachne, condemned and transformed for the sin of being better, of possessing a craft that rivaled the heavens. Think of Prometheus's Pandora, cast into infamy as the vessel for a trap she did not design. Observe Sisyphus, eternally condemned for the simple offense of being too clever. Intellect turned into a sentence of endless labor. And consider the Minotaur, a creature whose only crime was the fact of its birth, a physical existence deemed grotesque by those above. In myth after myth, the narrative reveals a haunting truth. The so-called monsters are often the powerless, the marginalized, and the misunderstood. The so-called gods are not more virtuous or more just. They are simply the ones who held the pen, the ones who stayed in power long enough to write the ending. And that is why these stories have endured for 3,000 years. They survived the passage of time not because they are simple tales of heroes and monsters, but because they are profound meditations on power and the chilling reality of who holds the authority to decide what is considered monstrous. The Greeks understood a fundamental truth about the nature of history. Those calling the shots were rarely the good ones. They did not possess moral superiority. They simply possessed the raw strength to impose their perspective upon the world. They had the might to silence the dissenters and etch their own version of reality into the stone of public memory, making their narrative the official one. When you look at these myths today, you aren't just seeing ancient folklore. You are looking at the fingerprints of those who won. You are witnessing the echoes of a past where power dictated truth, ensuring that only the voices of the victors remain to be told by the survivors. So the next time someone offers you the simplified version, the polished narrative where every side is clearly drawn in black and white, pause before you believe them. They will point to a hero, they will identify the villain, and they will name the monster who deserved its fate. But when they speak those words, you must look past their convenience. You must remember Medusa on her island, isolated by a history they refused to recount. You must think of the boy trapped in the Labyrinth, whose struggle was rewritten into a mere footnote of legend. Ask yourself who truly held the pen, who wrote the story, and exactly who did they choose to leave out. The truth is often buried beneath layers of convenient editing and selective memory. You must recognize that the most dangerous myth of all is not found in ancient stone or dusty scrolls, but in the lie told today, the one that insists the powerful are always the heroes. Look closer at the shadows of the past. They contain the voices those in power tried to silence. If this revelation has altered how you see even one of these stories, if a single thread of the past has been pulled back into focus, then subscribe. Join us as we embark on a recurring journey where every week, we take a myth you think you know and strip away the layers of polished fiction to put the dark, original truth back into it. These are not merely tales, they are ancient echoes that have been lying to you for 3,000 years. For centuries, the narrative has been sanitized, simplified and dulled by the passage of time. But when you pull back the veil, you find something different. These stories are far better and far stranger when you finally hear them whole. They are waiting in the shadows of history, demanding to be heard without the filters of modern convenience. Stay with us as we reclaim the forgotten truth, piece by piece, until the full haunting picture is finally revealed before your eyes.